Now, all our messages were subliminal, you know. Meaning we were sending messages out, all right.
If you want to see the truth, you have to search the shadows. What I mean by that is, if you and I are in a dark room and one of us is holding a torch and it's shining on an object, we can both see the object. But there are other things in the room that we cannot see because of the dark. At that point, it becomes important who's holding the torch. If you're holding the torch and there's something that you really don't want me to see, then you probably won't shine the torch on it and I won't see it. So if the powers that be don't want you to see something, they're not going to put light on it. And that's why I say you have to search the shadows. This is a portion of the cover from Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Now this cover is a real masterpiece, but there's another layer on this that's even more interesting. So keeping in mind about how I said to search the shadows, I'm going to tell you now that there is an 11-letter word that you're looking at. That's written right across the full length of that strip. Your eyes can't see it. Your subconscious can see it. Everybody's subconscious can see it. This will be the first time this has been shown to the public. And what the 11-letter word is, I'll explain after. But I'll show it to you first. This was done very subliminally, and it had to be. It had to be done very, very discreetly. See this doll on the right hand side sitting on the box? Well, on that box, there is a capital N, lightly scratched and painted on. So I'll start there. N. That's the last letter. First letter. So over here, left hand side. P. 9 left. Staring everyone in the face for the last 53 years. It's quite remarkable. And what this shows us, or what can of worms it's going to open, is even more remarkable. The second letter is an L, and it's part of this instrument here, just where the shine is. The third letter is very sneaky. You see this plant here? If we take the two little strips that are coming over it, like that, this piece here, and this bottom piece, follow it up, you have your E. There's a capital A just here, very small. Goes up, over there, there, there. There's an S here. An I. Capital N, very sneaky as well, just at the edge of the trouser mark. Come down and follow the line of the coat, and then back up over here. There's a G here, just follow the print. Some are caps, some are lowercase. It didn't matter, it just had to be done very, very discreetly. There's a T here. An O. You just see the curve on the floral arrangement here where it starts. Catches your eye. And that curve follows up through here, between the doll and back around. What that says is Pleasington. Pleasington is a cemetery. People for years have debated about this cover, whether it resembled a funeral procession, a burial site, or cemetery of some sort. For years they've been debating it. And there's the name of the cemetery written right across the front of it. And that cemetery is in Blackburn, Lancashire. Now, some people might get shivers down their spine when they heard me say Blackburn, Lancashire, because they'll know. In the song A Day in the Life on this album, there are lyrics that say 4,000 holes in Blackburn, Lancashire. But what on earth is this all about? Well, to know the truth, we have to go a little bit back. But you are not going to believe the cover-up that's taken place. Pleasington Cemetery. The word Pleasington was put there on purpose, very cleverly and very discreetly. And one would be forgiven to think that whatever they're trying to tell you, the Beatles, they weren't really allowed to tell you. And that's why they were trying to do it discreetly. I call them the Beatles, but as you can see, as I'm from that album, Sgt. Pepper's, they started calling themselves Beatles. Of course, if you change your name normally, it's because you're rebranding or you're a different entity. But I'll show you the real reason why they went from the Beatles to Beatles for this album anyway. It's all very clever. Again, all done very discreetly and suggestively. So if you look at this figurine here, this is meant to be the Hindu goddess Lakshmi, who represents destruction, rebirth and creation. And her arm, or one of her arms, is in line with this A here. But what they've done very cleverly is that they put it at such an angle so this A would also look like a possible capital R in your mind. And you can see how they've curved that shape, that part of the A there. And that's done on purpose. I'll draw it in and show you. So they've curved it around there. And then if you follow the line from this arm all the way up, you'll see that they want that to look like an R in your mind also. In this other hand, a bunch of flowers, and that's a dot. So what this says is Bert.les. Now that doesn't make sense at the moment. The trick is this piece over here. This is meant to be flowers in a vase, but what it actually is a hand pointing. It's a side view. So you have a thumb here. Here's the pointing finger. The rest of the fingers here. And that's the hand. And at the back you have this arrow shape. And normally when you see something like that, that would suggest turn page or something, but in this instance it means to go back to the start. And when you go back to the start, you'll see this over here, which is meant to be another bunch of flowers in a vase. But really, if you join these, what you'll see is that it's another S. And what that actually says is Bert-less, without Bert. So who's Bert? To understand fully who Bert is, we need to look at all the clues and symbolism and hidden messages that were put on this album by these four gentlemen. Worth noting that the eyes tell all here, and three of these gentlemen look reasonably miserable, and one looks inwardly ecstatic. I don't need to tell you which one, because I'm sure you can see for yourself. But we're going to need to look at other clues. So the clues I've brought you that are brand new are the Pleasington, name of the cemetery, and the Bert-less. Some old clues though are very important, like the bass drum. So this is an incredible piece of art. Not just because it looks great, but amazingly, if you hold a mirror right through the middle of the words Lonely Hearts, so you hold a mirror right through the centre of that, and you look down on it, what you'll see is this on the right. You'll see the numeral 1, the word 1, numerals 1x and the words he die. So that's 11-9, he die. But who die? Because they're telling us that they're birthless, we'll just say Birds died for now. But is that date anywhere else on the album? And yeah, it is actually. It's on it in 2 more spots. And both are related to this doll here. And beside this doll you can see a driving glove with lots of blood on it. And it's a left-handed glove. And you can see a little white car here. And that car is facing into the part of the jumper that says Stones. Does that represent a wall, maybe? Anyway, the 9/11 date, you can see here at the bottom of the jumper, there's a 9, very discreetly again, a 1 and a 1. There's the 9, 1, 1, 9/11. Now I flipped the image here because the next thing I'm going to show you is easier to see that way. And it's upside down the other way, so it really has to be shown this way. This is the shawl that this sort of granny or weird figure here is meant to be wearing. But upside down you can see it looks like a head, 2 eyes, a nose. But on the top of that, very subtly, you'll see 66 in here, in a leaf, and a 1x leaf, and x1. So I'll draw it in so you can see it. There's the 66, there's the divide, the 1, the x, that's 9, and 11. So 66, 9, 11. Okay, so I flipped the image back around here, but you can see the date up here, upside down now obviously, and the other 9/11 here. And this whole doll is very important. You've got a left-handed glove, as I said, blood on it, car pointing into a part that says Stones, maybe referencing a wall. Also, you see this is meant to say good guys on the arm here, but the only letters you can really see are G-O-D and then C-Y-S, which symbolises God sees. So that's very interesting why they put that there, I don't know. Also, this little part here does make you think of traffic lights when you look at it. And all this section is related to A Day in the Life. He blew his mind out in a car. He didn't notice that the lights had changed. A crowd of people stood and stared. They'd seen his face before. Obviously a familiar man, whoever he was. Now I'm going to prove to you that the backstories you're given about all these songs is nonsense. The backstory for this song, A Day in the Life, was, I think, something like John Lennon was sitting at a piano, the Lancashire Times was beside him, and there was an article about potholing in Blackburn. Anyway, I mentioned to you that Pleasington Cemetery is in Blackburn, Lancashire. You can see it here. Though the holes were rather small, they had to count them all. Now they know how many holes it takes to fill the Albert Hall. And we know they're birthless. And so there's Albert mentioned in the same song. But there's actually code that's been hidden in these lyrics for the last 53 years that for some reason people haven't found before, or if they have, it's never made it to public domain. But before I continue, this is where things start getting a little strange. Well, as if they weren't strange already. But they get even stranger, in the sense that we were given backstories for these songs. Now this beauty here, being for the benefit of Mr. Kite, the backstory was that John Lennon had bought some poster of an old circus, Pablo Fanque, and the poster was bought in some antique shop in, I think it was London. This was the story anyway, and that's where he got the idea for the lyrics and for the song. You'd nearly believe it, except for one thing. I like to write, even a bit of music. In fact, the music that's been playing in the background here is all my own. And what's in that album of my own are the discoveries I've made about this album. Because the information starts getting a little bit sensitive now, and I needed to document it and get it out into the public domain in some way or another, so I did that just over a year ago. I'll leave the links in the description if you're interested in checking that out. But being a writer, I noticed something very strange. And that is that this song, being for the benefit of Mr. Kite, is the only one with exclamation marks. And the reason they did that is because they wanted you to look at this song in particular. And more so, they wanted you to look at the words that have exclamation marks in particular. There are 4 words that do. There's Mr. Kite, exclamation mark, fire, exclamation mark, world, exclamation mark, and waltz, exclamation mark. And the reason they did that is to make them stand out. So I said I'd have a little play around in those words, and what I did eventually was I put a numerical value to the letters of each of the words that had exclamation marks. So for instance, a numerical value for A would be 1, for B would be 2, for C it would be 3, etc., etc. Within that code, there's some very interesting numbers that have a relevance to all this. It really is worth considering that, in light of what I'm about to show you, it kind of blows the doors right off the official narrative or the official story of what this song was about, because the chances of this being a coincidence are truly 0 to none. So it doesn't leave you much option, but however strange it seems, you have to accept the fact that it's not a coincidence, so there's something to this. The first word is Mr. Kite, K-I-T-E, and I said to give it a numerical value. So you give the K11, I9, T20, and E is 5. And when you do that, you'll get this. 11, 9, 25. Immediately the 11 and 9 stand out because we've seen that date. It was elaborately put into a bass drum. It's written on the doll's head in the show. It's on the doll's jumper. And here we have it again. And what you see in the red is these numbers that you see in the black mirrored past the exclamation mark. And it now becomes very important, as do the rest of the words. The 5 here is a big clue again. The reason I say that is because on the back of the album you see the 4 Beatles. And the only one who's pointing to any of the lyrics is George Harrison. He's pointing to one line in particular. And we already know from the detail that's been put into some of the messages in this, we could be absolutely certain that the line he's pointing to isn't a random line that was chosen. It's a very, very significant clue. And the line he's pointing to says this: Wednesday morning at 5 o'clock as the day begins. And his finger is pointing at the 5 o'clock part. So whatever this is, the Wednesday morning at 5 o'clock as the day begins, this is a huge point for the Beatles themselves. As in, this is a huge moment. The reason they're pointing to this line, something changed, something turned. And this is what it's all about. That Wednesday morning at 5 o'clock. And now we know it's a Wednesday. If you go back and look in calendars online, you'll see that the 9th of November was a Wednesday, which would be 9/11. We know it's 66. We know the year is 66 from the numbers on the doll. So what happened on Wednesday morning at 5 o'clock as the day began on the 9th of November 1966? Why is there a very deliberate reference to car crashes? Why is there a name of a cemetery written right across the album cover? Why did they change the name from the Beatles to Beatles, which also says birthless? And why, oh why, have they put code into the lyrics? You have 5:02, 9/11. So we have the Wednesday morning at 5 o'clock as the day begins, the only line that any of the Beatles are pointing to. But wouldn't it be strange if we could actually find 5:02 anywhere? Would that mean? Could it mean? 5:02 is the time, let's say, Bert was pronounced dead. Well, watch this. Look at that bass drum. Imagine that to be a clock face. Does anything stand out to you? Can you see two hands? Here and here. Where they've done the artwork, ever so slight, like everything else. They've emphasized this spot and this spot very deliberately. Very subtle, but very deliberately. Here, going towards where this B is, and here, heading to the start of the second P here. So I'll just draw a black line on them to emphasize it so you can see it a bit clearer. There's one. I've extended the length of the line just to give it a more feel for what it would be if it wasn't a clock, okay? And there's the other one. The lines are extended straight. No messing. That's all as it is. That, folks, says 5:02. 2 minutes past 5. Coincidence? No. So in the word Mr. Kite, you have the time 5:02, which I'm going to put out there as a time of a pronounced death. And you have the date 9/11 again, the 9th of November. What else is in the song being for the benefit of Mr. Kite? Let's have a look at the rest of the code. The next word that has an exclamation mark is the word fire. But because I know what these numbers adhere to, it's going to be easier to explain it to you if I skip to the next word, world. Note though that the first word, Mr. Kite, is representing a death date, time of death and a date. So when you look at world and you repeat the exact same process as we have here, you get this: 23, 15, 18, 12 and 4. Now when I flipped it, I got this. And what some hardcore Beatles fans might notice if they're watching this is that, oddly enough, Paul McCartney's birthday is the 18th of June 1942. And you can see the 42, the 18, and I got the 6 smelling the 5 plus 1, because you will do that in numerology from time to time. And the truth is, to try and write words would be difficult to do what they've done, so this is perfectly reasonable. So what on earth is Paul McCartney's birthday doing in that song? This is more proof that these songs weren't what we were told they were about. And indeed, the whole album perspective, what you've all been fed, is just utterly untrue. These numbers here on the right, 132, they're also on another word, waltz, here. But I'll get back to fire and waltz. Let's just go check out the cover and a few things first. I said to you earlier that people debated for years whether this cover looked like a funeral procession or a burial site. And you can see why people would argue that. Well, you have the headstone here, which immediately gives it a graveyard feel. You have these floral arrangements, the same kind of thing you typically see at a funeral. And you have this floral arrangement shaped like a shovel, which symbolises undertaking. You got the Waxworks Beatles here, dressed in black. Ringo's looking sombre, looking down, there's a hand on his shoulder, typical scene at a funeral. Got the crowd of people, the soil obviously. And I've shown you the word Pleasington. You see it there, written across that strip. And I've told you that's the name of a cemetery in the town of Pleasington in Blackburn, Lancashire, Pleasington Cemetery. I showed you the bass drum clue as well. You hold the mirror through it, and you get 119, you die. 119, you die. People have said that this floral arrangement here, this yellow one, looks like a left-handed bass guitar. And it does, but it's only got 3 strings instead of 4. And it even suggestively says the word Paul. P-A-U-L question mark. Paul question mark. So you can see that here. P-A-U-L question mark. But the truth of the matter is, if you're a good detective of any kind, you have to start wondering why they're drawing attention to Paul out of all the members. The reason I say that is because you've got this floral arrangement shaped like a left-handed bass, for starters, and possibly even suggestively says the word Paul question mark. And there's 3 strings instead of 4, 1 is missing, left-handed bass, definite reference to Paul McCartney. You have a left-handed driving glove with blood on it, and you have a white Aston Martin car looking like it's hit a wall going into the Stones part of the jumper. So the left-handed glove, Paul McCartney. And then you have Paul McCartney's birthday, his date of birth, hidden in code, in the song being For the Benefit of Mr. Kite. They're asking you to direct your attention at Paul here. And we know Bert is involved as well. But there's a link with all this. So let's take a closer look at Paul. So straight off the bat, you're going to see there's a hand above Paul's head. So Paul's been singled out here. You'll also notice the waxworks here on the left. Waxworks are made as accurately as they can be. And you can see the height proportion between them all. Ringo definitely being the smallest, John and Paul being a similar height. And the cover of Sgt. Pepper's, Paul looks elongated. And to cover that, the fact that he's taller, they've put a hat on George Harrison and a hat on Ringo. And also, the hand above the head, and this gentleman here who played Tarzan in that series, great series, is looking down. So the combination of this gentleman looking down and the hand above Paul's head also makes Paul look shorter than what he actually is in this picture. Another thing you'll notice is that John, Ringo and George are all holding their instruments with their right hand. You'd expect to see Paul holding the instrument with his left hand, but as you can see in this picture, he's holding it with both his left hand and his right hand. And if you look at the back of the cover, that's very telling. Now they've played with perspective a bit too, you can see that, as in they've pushed John a little further back and Ringo, but nonetheless Paul here is made to look like a very big man. But it is strange, I mean, when you consider some of their older photos, you can see the height here, again similar to the waxworks. And waxworks, as you all know, are done pretty much as accurately as they can be. Paul here, in fact Paul's even a little bit ahead of the others, which would make him slightly smaller than you're seeing there. These are all Beatles cards that came out back in the day with the statistics from each member. And here's the Paul McCartney one. Beatles colour cards. Meet Paul McCartney. Vital statistics. Birthday, June 18th, 1942. And that, as you've seen yourself, is hidden in the song Being for the Benefit of Mr. Kite. But if we scroll down, hair dark brown, eyes brown, height 5'11". John Lennon was 5'11". So what's going on here? If you arrive at a crime scene and you can see somebody has been shot and a gun was found 50 metres away and the shell casings at the gun, you'd know, because you can see the evidence, that someone was killed. Now, if you were to say, no, I can't see that happening because I don't understand why it would happen, why would that person be killed? That'd be ridiculous. You can't find a motive and you immediately look at evidence. But you can't rule out the obvious either. Because of course that person would have been shot by somebody else. But you can't say, no, I don't believe it happened because I can't find a motive. You may never understand the motive, but it doesn't change the fact that it happened. So we can see that this Paul here is definitely a taller man than the older Paul. That's why they wanted you to look at him. They're trying to let you know and it should be becoming pretty obvious. They've given you the name of a cemetery. They've said 11/9 he died on a bass drum. They've given you a time of death in numerous occasions. They've even told you the name that he was buried under. Written in these weeds here, underneath the bass drum to the left of the trophy, there's some words and numbers. And you can just see the capital O here. Underneath that, you'll see an I and a little P here. Now this is very difficult to see, but it continues across here. Now it was very subtle, like all the artwork, because don't forget they weren't allowed to tell you any of these things. But it's difficult to make out, but it says RIP, and there's a P here, an M, and a C. RIP PMC. Now I will draw it over this so you can see it properly, but just before I do that, I'll just try and go through it without drawing on it. So you have RIP PMC, and you have a 6 here, and a 6 here. That's 66. And here's an X, a small X, and the same texture here for a 1, then another 1, X again, a 5 here, a 0, and 2, 502. But it'd be much easier to show you that with it on it already, and I can take it off bit by bit as I'm showing you. So here you see RIP PMC 66 11 9 502. Now I'll remove it bit by bit so you can see it. There's the R, the I, the P, the P, MC, the 6, the 6, X, the 1, the 1, X, 5, 0, 2. What the Beatles were trying to tell you, certainly in this album cover, it's very clear. They're trying to tell you that Paul did die in 66 and that he was buried under a name in Pleasington Cemetery. This here is an article from a newspaper called the Michigan Daily, and it was published on the 14th of October 1969. It's basically telling you that a group of students in America had done some research and had come to the conclusion that Paul had died in a car crash and was replaced. Now it caused a huge stir around the world, and other papers published similar headlines. It was quashed by the authorities pretty soon after, but I suppose it would have to have been, really. But the original rumour actually started in London in 1967, and the reason being was that these images came out. So the story went that they'd been working in Abbey Road Studios, and there was some kind of disagreement, and Paul left on the early hours of Wednesday morning on the 9th of November. It was a rainy night, and he crashed on the way home and was instantly killed. There was also talk that he had picked up the lady in the rain during that journey, but she survived, and her name was Rita. I guess that's why they put the song Lovely Rita into the album, and also the song She's Leaving Home, because if she did survive, they obviously decided they were going to replace him very quickly, and she seems to have been possibly shipped off to another country with a different identity or something. But that's what She's Leaving Home is about, her leaving abruptly. And that's probably why John Lennon released this photo of a crashed white car very similar to Paul's. But the passenger door here is open, and he's holding a peace sign, but what he's really letting you know in this photo is that there were two people in the car, and the passenger got away. And in my opinion, I have to say, I think that the Lovely Rita may well have been a prostitute. I mean, some of the imagery and some of the language in the song really suggested. Also, the time in the morning adds to the idea. The time in the morning she was picked up, I mean. Should have been 5. So yeah, who knows? It's just my opinion. And that song, A Day in the Life, is about the whole incident, really. Read the news today about a lucky man who made the grade. That's about the new replacement. The news was rather sad. He had to laugh because he saw the photograph. He blew his mind out in a car. Didn't notice the lights had changed. It's all about the car crash. Seen his face before because it was familiar. It was Paul. Nobody was really sure if he was from the House of Lords. Well, the House of Lords is an anagram for the old 4 Shoes. And of course the Beatles referenced themselves as a band called the Shoes from time to time.
John thought of the name Beatles, and he'll tell you about it now. It means Beatles, isn't it, now? That's just a name. Like shoe. The shoes. See, we could have been called the Shoes for all you know.
So perhaps that was their way of telling you. Then the English army had won the war. That to me just says the establishment obviously won the argument about the replacement, because there's no way in the right minds the Beatles would have wanted to do that. But obviously they lost the argument of the war, we'll say, and the establishment won. And this bit where there's a change in the song, woke up, fell out of bed, that's about the replacement getting the call to take up the new role as Paul. So he woke up, fell out of bed, dragged a comb across my head. And that's to say that he changed his parting from one side to the other, which is exactly what happened with Paul ever since that album. Found my way downstairs, drank a cup, looking up, noticed I was late. So we made it to the bus in Seconds flat, found his way upstairs and had a smoke. And somebody spoke and he went into a dream, and i.e., he went to some offices somewhere, someone told him the plan about joining the Beatles, and that's when he went into a dream. And then you have the 4,000 holes in Blackburn, Lancashire. That's a reference to Pleasington Cemetery. And they know how many holes it takes to fill the Albert Hall. And there's the mention of Albert already. And we know that they're Bertless, so there's another clue. So that's your first name of the name that Paul was buried under, Albert. I'd love to turn you on. That line always stood out as a strange one to put in this song. It turns out when you play that backwards, or say that phrase backwards, particularly in the way that John Lennon said it, it says the words, "Nobody notice Paul die." All the songs are related to the event in one way or another, and I'll do another video about that maybe someday. But Lucy in the Sky Diamonds, of course everyone thought this was about LSD, but the Beatles vigorously denied it and took offence to it in a lot of interviews. They said it was a very well worked out piece of poetry. And the truth is that if you play it backwards, slow down, you'll only get this in the original copies because everything's been remastered every year since. And the reason being they don't want you to find out this stuff. But if you play it backwards, slow down, you'll get the details of the event. I'll just play you a snippet now, but as I said, I will do another day. The establishment has really tried to cover this up by remastering all the early stuff. Could never figure it out when I was younger why they kept doing that, but now I know why. To edit all the clues and to change a lot of the vocals. And this is the 50th year anniversary edition of Sgt. Pepper's. Came out a few years ago. And you can see how the word Pleasington has virtually been removed. Changed all the colouring, the strips of the plant are gone there, the A is gone. The N is pretty much gone off the box. And now I've noticed that they're also manipulating images and videos online too lately. So there was no intention of this ever coming out to you. And then there's this one, just showing you the code in it. Kite being the time of death and date of death that Paul died, world being Paul's birthday. And it's my belief that the other two numbers are the dates in which will be on Albert's gravestone in Pleasington. But this is all about the funeral in my opinion. Pablo Frank's Fair. What a scene of men and horses, hoops and garters. Again, that's about the police on the scene of the crash. The garters, of course, a reference to Rita, and a hogshead of real fire. The hogshead being a reference to Roadhog, someone who drives fast. Mr. K being Mr. Kite, of course, is celebrated. Mr. K is passed. Performs his feat on Saturday, Bishopsgate. It's all imagery. All about the funeral. He flies through the ring, don't be late. Of course, Henry the Horse dances the waltz. Interestingly, if you replace the E with the O from horse and put the E from Henry into horse, you get the honorary hearse. Not spelled correctly, obviously, but gets the message across. The honorary hearse. Mr. K performs his tricks without a sound because he's in a coffin, unfortunately. He'll demonstrate 10 somersets. He'll undertake on solid ground. Undertake on solid ground. More funeral reference. Some days in preparation. So here you can see the part where it says birthless. The S over here. But just above the birth, above the E and the or, you'll see that small capital A that was used in the word Pleasington also. And just leaning on that A is a capital L. I'll draw them in for you here. So the A is just here, goes up, over, down there, exact same as the Pleasington. And the L is just leaning on it. You can see it here. There, capital L. Albertless. This here is a section from one of Ringo's solo albums. And this album came with a free magnifying glass because there was apparently some clues on it. And if you look here, you see the word without. But written underneath it is the name Albert. You see A, the L, the B, the E, or T. Without Albert. Albertless. And curiously, his famous phrase, peace and love, you can see the bottom half of here, and love. But the truth is, if you turn that, if you rotate that 90 degrees to the right, this is what you'll get. Macar, dead. McCartney, dead. And you can see that there. Macar, dead. But this song, When I'm 64, probably has the most amount of clues in it really, and it's kind of like a riddle, and that's why they have at the end of the song the lines, give me your answer, fill in a form. They're telling you that they're giving you information in this. Will you still be sending me a Valentine birthday greeting bottle of wine? It's my belief that the two of the numbers in the code of being for the benefit of Mr. Kite are the dates that would be on Albert's gravestone in Pleasington. And one of them is very close to Valentine's Day, and that's what that reference is about. If I'd been out till 2:45, so from 4 to 3, another clue. If you say the word, I could stay with you. In other words, if the Beatles open their mouth, they could be underground with Albert too. Very serious stuff. I could be handy mending a fuse. That's a reference to Albert Einstein to give you clues about the name Albert. When your lights have gone, i.e. passed away. You can knit a sweater by the fireside. That's about the doll wearing the sweater with the dates on it. Sunday morning, go for a ride, and the car. Telling you to look at these things. Doing the garden, digging the weeds. Who could ask for more? Again, that's about the cover. That's the bit about the weeds underneath the bass drum that says RIP PMC 66 11 9 502. Every summer we can rent a cottage in the Isle of Wight if it's not too dear. Well, guess what? The most famous cottage on the Isle of Wight is a cottage called Albert Cottage. And it used to be where Prince Albert and Victoria used to stay, Queen Victoria. And that's why they say if it's not too dear. They're just giving you clues all the time. And that's a big one. Grandchildren on your knee, Vera, Chuck and Dave. And they haven't used commas here. And they haven't used the word and. I think that's an anagram. And like the Henry the Horse becomes the honorary hearse. This very easily becomes check cadaver. Obviously, cadaver is a dead body. It's telling you to check the body, which is interesting. Send me a postcard, drop me a line, stating point of view, and that's exactly what it is. Stating the point of view is in drop me a line because Albert is below. Indicate precisely what you mean to say, and the key word here is indicate, because it actually sounds like in decay. Indicate precisely what you mean to say. You're sincerely wasting away in decay. And there you have it. Give me your answer, fill in a form. Of course, when I'm 64. And what's really odd is that all the people on the front of that cover and all the props are all listed and numbered officially from the day they were done. And guess who is number 64? Well, Paul McCartney is. And what's even more interesting about this is that Albert has 6 letters and his second name has 4 letters. You can see here Paul McCartney is labelled number 64. When I'm 64, when I'm Paul McCartney, i.e. when I'm Albert something. And they've used this before, this kind of thing. You can see here this still from Yellow Submarine. The number 49 there. Here lie buried, number 49. And Paul McCartney, well, Paul has 4 letters and McCartney has 9 letters. Number 49, Paul McCartney. Here lie buried. And over here, this guy, well, we'll get back to him and what that number 84 means. It's the same idea as these two. His second name was pretty difficult to work out, to be honest. And they give you lots of hints in these lyrics. They sort of tell you what letter it begins with. They tell you words that it sounds like. And also on the cover, they have it suggestively written in 2 places, just like the other artwork. And they have that in 2 places on the cover there, that I can find anyway. And I wanted to put the second name into this documentary, but in reflection, I think it's probably not a great idea right now, because there seems to be someone else buried in that cemetery with the same name. And the album we were looking for was possibly exhumed in 1996. The remaining 3 Beatles would in no way in their right minds have wanted to go along with getting a replacement, especially since John and Paul were childhood friends and the very best of friends. And it's no secret that they never got on after this album, and it's becoming clearly evident why. Because John had to look at somebody who was made to look like his old best friend, but was a totally different human, and he had to pretend he was the same guy. That would have been hugely traumatic on the man. Of course, to get away with such a thing, they would have had to have found a very talented musician and someone that they could make look like Paul. But when you're dealing with the kind of money that the establishment has, plastic surgery isn't a problem. There are 2 ways in which the Beatles were trying to tell you who the replacement was. The first is the name of the album, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, and I'll get to that in a sec. But the other way is this. So let me introduce to you the one and only Billy Shears. That's your first clue, Billy Shears. Remember that name. And then the album title, as I said, is the other one, Sgt. Pepper's. And to understand this, we have to go back to Liverpool in the mid-60s. Back in the mid-60s, there was a band who the Beatles apparently supported when they started, and they were called Billy Pepper and the Pepper Pots. And they did some Beatles covers, but the front man, his name was Bill Shepherd, and you can see it there. Shepherd, pronounced like shepherd who tends or shears sheep, but spelt different. But that was the nickname, Billy Shears. That's where it came from Bill Shepherd. Bill Shepherd was the front man, and he was a very, very talented musician. And that's evident in the latter half of the Beatles' music. This guy is good, there's no doubt about it. His father was also a very talented musician. But we'll stick to this bill here, Bill Shepherd, Billy Pepper and the Pepper Pots. They released 3 albums between 64 and 66. There they are there, but there's not much else you're going to find about these guys. It's like they never existed after that, oddly enough. And here he is, Billy Shepherd, as a young man. It's very difficult to find any photos of Billy. It's like he didn't exist. And you know why now. You can see the eyes. They're the eyes we look at today when we see Paul McCartney. Now Billy, as it turns out, also knew the Beatles. He used to write in their monthly magazine called The Beatles Book. And you can see a section of that here, Behind the Spotlight by Billy Shepherd and Johnny Dean. And believe it or not, the very last article that Billy Shepherd wrote for the Beatles monthly magazine was in October 1966, the month before Paul died in a car crash. No coincidence again. And after that, his identity as good as vanishes. You won't find a thing. Not a thing. But Billy knew the Beatles. In fact, he was a good writer, and he knew them so well that he got to write their first biography, The True Story of the Beatles. Isn't that ironic that he wrote that? Anyway, you'll see at the bottom here, as personally told to Billy Shepherd, i.e. Billy Shears. So Billy knew them, and this is the man they got to replace, believe it or not. But of course, he wouldn't have looked the same as Paul, so there would have had to have been some plastic surgery, no doubt. As I said, these are pictures of Billy as a young man. In reality, though, Billy was 5 years older, 4 or 5 years older than the real Paul. So they had a lot of work to do regarding whatever transformation process they were going to go through. So these pictures are of a young Billy, but you can see the resemblances here. When he was put in as replacement, these were very early stages. You can see the chin and the eyes. I mean, just look at the eyebrows. They certainly didn't change much. Exactly the same. And this is him in his first proper appearance. This is meant to be December 1966. And this is Paul in August of the same year, 1966. And you can see how Billy was 5 years older, alright. They've done their best to do a makeshift job with the time they had, no doubt. And there are striking similarities, but it's not the same man, and that's why they've given him a moustache to cover the fact that his mouth is a wider mouth. You can see that. His face is also longer and narrower. He's been a naughty boy, he let his face grow long, as John Lennon said. They've also given him a polo neck to wear to cover the fact that he has a longer neck than the old Paul, which you can see that there too. It's a different man. So, the real Paul McCartney on the left here, in August 1966. And all these other pics on the right of a Paul after November 1966. And he crashed. And you can see the plastic surgery that's gone on here with Billy. That's how it all started, these phases. You can see he was older. And here. That's morphed on ever since. And they've made him more and more like Paul as the years have gone by. I showed you these images earlier. And I explained how number 49, Here Lie Buried, number 49, the 4 and the 9. Paul has 4 letters and McCartney has 9 letters. And I said I'd get back to this guy. It's 84. And this is Bill Shepherd in the very early days pretending to be Paul. And Bill has 4 letters and Shepherd has 8. And so now you all know who this gentleman is here in the blue. It's Billy Pepper and the Pepper Pots frontman, Bill Shepherd, otherwise known as Billy Shears. And that's why he's holding his instrument with both hands. You have to learn to play left-handed to take up the role of Paul. And one and one and one is three. You've got to be good looking because he's so hard to see.